Stop thinking about what you expect out of life and start thinking about what life expects out of you. Ugh. It's a really tricky time right now. I figured it was time to go to a real therapist. He said, I think you lack empathy. Like a Republican? The thing is, I like older men. Which brings me to the strong and deep sexual feelings that I have developed for Andrew Cuomo. I want him to flatten my curve, and then I want to flatten his curve, and then I want us to apex together. Spirituality is fine with me as a component of your lifestyle. I feel spiritual when I'm on mushrooms. I've done every drug. Unless there's a new drug that came out this morning, I've tried it. I took my SATs tripping on acid. I didn't get into college, but I had a great time taking that test.
Yeah, man. That's the voice of our good friend, citizen of Sway in the Morning, comedian, actress, writer, television host, producer and activist, the one and only Chelsea Handler is back.
Chelsea!
Good morning, you guys. Good morning. That was such a nice intro. Hi.
Hey, what up?
Hey.
Chelsea Handler. Good to have you on the show, Chelsea. We got a lot of questions. We figure only you could answer for us because we can't figure it out. And I watched the special. I love you in the special because you always find a way to intertwine your personal journeys into your humor, which I can appreciate because it gives us a chance to know who you are a little more, Chelsea. And right now, man, I think we all been reflecting on who we truly are during this whole COVID and this pandemic that we've been happening, that we all been experiencing. Would you agree, Chelsea Handler?
I would definitely agree to that. I think it's a combination of having Trump as our president for 4 years and being, in the middle of a pandemic with no foreseeable future or end in sight, I should say, has made us all wonder, who are you? What's your plan, for life?
What's your plan for life, your individual plan? I've been baffled by white women during this process, Chelsea. I mean, I've seen some real ornery, bodacious women out here that are just foul. The whole Karen phenomenon that's been happening. What do you? What kind of conversations are you having with your friends? Like, have you lost any friendships based on this political climate and what's been going on in this country?
Yeah. I mean, I lose friendships all the time. I mean, part of the work of being anti-racist, which is something I take a lot of pride in being. It's not just being not racist; it's being anti-racist, which means calling people out on their bull. I'm going to try not to curse because I know this is a morning show.
Oh yeah, you can. It's Sirius XM. Go ahead, do yourself. Be free.
Great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, great. I'm so glad you told me. Calling people out on their fucking bullshit. And saying and having uncomfortable conversations. The biggest problem, I think, are the conversations between white women where they think they're in a safe environment and they can talk about whether it's their white fragility, about finding out how offensive our behavior has been for so long and how uncomfortable we've made people of color feel in the workplace and with things like tokenism and with, when white people are commenting and talking to their white friends, it's our responsibility, if you are interested in being anti-racist, to say, hey, this conversation's not okay with me either. And those are the conversations that I know firsthand that are changing because I have tons of white privileged friends. I live in LA. I have a lot of these conversations all the time. And these conversations weren't happening 2 years ago. So I'm very hopeful on that front. I'm optimistic because people are asking questions and they're not coming from such a place of fear of saying the wrong thing. They're actually saying, oh, my God, what can I do? What should I be doing?
Right.
Absolutely. Chelsea Handler is here. And also, I just happened to be watching on HBO Max your special because I follow you. So, every time you have something going on, I try to check it out. And make sure absolutely, man, I'm in the know. Chelsea Handler Evolution is available now on HBO Max. I'm gonna let the queens of the show jump in. HB, you want to say what up to Chelsea?
Chelsea, what's up? It's Heather. How you been?
Hi, Heather.
You've been good. I just gotta jump into the obvious with your tweets and your activism and everything that's been happening. Are you, like you saying so much is changing? Will your dating process change after all of this? With the pandemic, with the presidency, with all of that, are you more selective now with dating?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not as easy to have sex with people in the middle of a pandemic because you have to, well, it's not as easy to have sex with strangers in the middle of a pandemic because you have to get their background. I had a guy come over the other night, I'm on this dating site, Raya. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. And I'm like, okay, I have to have sex again at some point. Like, something's got to happen here. So I was talking to this guy. I had him come over for some outdoor drinks. We hung out for about an hour and a half. And then when I was like, okay, this seems like a reasonable option, I said, what's your COVID strategy? How have you been handling COVID? Are you safe? Like, do you wear? And he's like, yeah, I wear a mask wherever I go. But I got to be honest with you. He's like, he said, I don't think they do much. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And I said to him, I just went off on him for the next 45 minutes. I go, why do you think you know more? Only a white man would think they know more than a doctor or a fucking scientist. What makes you think you know anything about how a mask works?
Yo.
Like, why don't you go and think about what I said? Why don't you go home, think about what I said, and hit me back in a week when you have a different perspective?
I love she was willing to let him go a week and then she could come back and get it if he wanted to.
But let me hear your perspective first.
Oh, Chelsea.
Go wear your mask for a week and then come back for some penetration.
Too hot to handle the handler, yo.
You know what's funny? Wait, hold on. I'm sorry, Tracy. It was funny, Heather, in a stand-up, you kind of go in on that in the beginning from the front because it's this whole thing that Chelsea only dates black guys, right? And then
Yeah.
So is that you get a lot of white guy backlash? Because it sounds like it the way you confronted that on stage.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely get the vibe. They don't say it to me, but my girlfriends will say it, or I have guy friends who will be like, yeah, I've definitely heard guys say that. Like, they think I only date black men. I'm like, wait, I date all sorts I'm an egalitarian. I'm ready to date anybody. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna, so it's very frustrating for me to have a whole section of the society that doesn't think I want to date them. It's like, no, of course I do. Listen, I need to lock something down soon. I'm 45. It's like, things are going in the wrong direction, not in the right direction.
Oh my gosh, Chelsea, I'm fucking with you so hard, my girl. It's Tracy. Thank you for joining us on the show. I want to get your take on, I've been having a lot of conversations with particularly some white friends that I have, and how it's been challenging for them to undress their privilege because it feels like every day they're realizing these subtle racial biases that they have, and they have to just come to terms with that. And the beautiful thing about you and your high level form of comedy is that it makes these conversations easier to have, because a lot of times when you have them with yourself, it's harder. I'm wondering if you'd be able to share with us what you discovered about your own privilege recently that maybe you didn't even realize in the past as you keep digging.
I think the thing let me start by saying that I think the thing that rings true to me the most is from when I did this documentary called Hello Privilege. It's me, Chelsea, because I was running up against so many white people who didn't believe that white privilege was a term. And this was like 2 years ago when I filmed this, or 3 years ago, right? They didn't understand the term white privilege. So in my view, I wanted to explain my white privilege to other people without accusing other people, but showing them, hey, this is white privilege. My success has to do with white privilege. The fact that I can get away with things, and that I could talk about drinking and sleeping around and drugs for my entire career and be rewarded for that is white privilege. So I wanted to demonstrate and hang myself out to dry a little bit to bring other white people in. I'm not trying to tell black people. I'm trying to talk to white women. That's my biggest fan base, and I know that I can relate to them, and I want them to understand what I've learned. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and the one sentence or the one exchange that stood out so much to me in that film was when I asked these white girls, you know, do you think that there's racism? You know, do you think there's such a thing as white privilege? And they said, no, we don't see that. We don't see that. I said, but would you see it if you're white? You know, and I think my argument for all white people is just because it's not affecting you doesn't mean it's not happening. And if you're a white person, you're most likely not looking out for racist acts or discriminatory acts or slightly marginalized behavior, even at a place like a Starbucks or something where, you know, like, you know, when you know, the idea that when you see 3 black men across the street, white women are fearful of that. That's a product of a culture that has taught us that it is dangerous that there are black men standing across the street. So we need to dismantle as white people. It is our responsibility, and this is why I bang on so hard about it, and I do lose a lot of friends and family, but, you know, a lot of them come back around, is that it is our responsibility to dismantle this and to reprogram what we have been taught since the beginning of time in this country. Because this country is not the greatest country in the world. It has the potential to be the greatest country in the world if we can reconcile what we've done and how we've treated an entire race since the Declaration of Independence, since this country was created. We made a document about freedom while we had 200,000 slaves. So I just keep repeating facts that people can't dispute with me when I get into conversations with people that want to disagree with me or want to be resistant. And in my stand-up special, you know, I say it. I'm like, anytime you're defensive about racism, you're wrong.
Chelsea Handler. I love it.
Bong, bong.
Bong.
Yeah.
Mike, that mic, Rich, that mic is, the mic is just malfunctioned, Rich. Hey, Rich, you in the family too, man. You want to talk to Chelsea?
I absolutely do. How you doing, Chelsea? Good morning, Grand Rising.
Hey, how are you?
I want to ask you. I'm very well, much better now. Speaking to you.
I'm glad I'm speaking to you guys too.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you about your books because you're a top-selling author. What inspires you to write? How do you get the topics? What motivates you to write a book?
You know, it's the same with the stand-up. It's just like whatever you're going through, I love to overshare. You know, that's why I've made a career from oversharing, from telling people what's going on with me, whether it's how many guys I'm hooking up with from my first book, which was like about one-night stands, and to, you know, the evolution that I've had, which is, you know, the latest book was about going to therapy and waking the fuck up and having, like, you know, getting the gift of self-awareness, which is reflected in, you know, my stand-up special, which is why I called it Evolution, because it was kind of based off my last book. It's about, you know, all the humiliating things you learn about yourself in therapy. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm such a cunt, you know, like you have to correct your behavior. And so I think with regard to the writing of the books and the stand-up, it's always just an extension of what I'm dealing with, like my personal stories. You know, like this summer I went to Maine and we stayed at this place, this house. I rented this house with a bunch of friends, some family members. And then we went to, like, you know, Barbara Bush was there, George Bush's daughter. And she would come over every morning, and she's cool. She's got a degree in racial justice. You know, she's woke. She's fucking smart, funny. And I'm hanging out with her, and, you know, she's, like, inviting me over. She said, come on over to the compound, the Kenny Bunkford compound, to play pickleball. And I was like, I don't think so. I was like, I can't trust myself around your dad. You know, I don't know if I can even go and be respectful. Like, I don't know what I'm going to say or when I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
I went there, you know, met him, and I was like, oh, you know, of course he's nice and charming in person, and you're on his property. So it's, you know, you're like, oh, okay, I can control myself for 20 minutes and not create, a situation with him that is uncomfortable for anybody. But, like, that in and of itself, like, that's, my sister goes, well, here's your next book. Like, this is the first chapter of your next book. Him taking me around, showing me his art collection while I was stoned, wearing sunglasses. And at one point, he says to me, he said, can you take your sunglasses off? And I was like, I think it's best for both of us if I keep them on.
You told the former president of the United States no? You wasn't going to take your sunglasses off?
Yeah, I did. No. He could have seen. He would have seen my eyes, and I knew he was sober, and he would have recognized exactly what was going on.
You're hilarious, Chelsea Handler. Hey, hey, yo, that's privilege in itself, right? You could go hang out with the president. Hi.
Yeah, no shit, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't have even. I couldn't even. Shit, I couldn't have pulled that off. That's an amazing.
But that's where my stories come from. They're always real life. You know, it's like everything is about what I've experienced, what I'm going through. And, you know, that's why it was so important for me to do this special, because I wanted to bring relief, like to film this stand-up special during COVID. I wanted to bring relief and joy and humanity to such a dark time that we're all living through.
And you did great work. You know, I hear you being really honest in it and very transparent in it. And I think right now, that's the kind of commentary that comedians are providing that's extremely valuable. I saw David Letterman with Dave Chappelle, and what Dave Chappelle is doing on his property and inviting all the comedians. Did you do Dave Chappelle? Did you go to his property?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did. You did.
She went to Yellow Spring Sway. It was the same weekend we got invited, but we couldn't make it.
We couldn't make it. Yeah, and that whole environment, I love it. There's so much truth coming out of that. What was it like, Chelsea? Being there?
Oh, it was so much fun. Oh my God, it was so much fun. It was just like a great, you know, he tests people before you go, and then you arrive and you get another test. So it's like once you get the bracelet, you know, your COVID-free bracelet, you are like in this little community. So he has a bar, he has the comedy club, like he had built this stage in this cornfield, so all the comics and everybody who has a bracelet could hang out inside. He has like 450 people in the audience, and then he has this bar afterwards that he built, which is like turns into a nightclub, and they play awesome music until like 5 a.m. So they do that from like Thursday or they do that like Wednesday through Saturday. I stayed for one night, and I was like, get me the fuck out of here before I OD. So, but it's super fun, and Dave is just, you know, the best.
What's the cannabis like?
Cannabis is full throttle, mushrooms full throttle. I mean, I left there and I found mushrooms like in my pocket, so somebody was handing them out vigorously.
All right, Chelsea Handler, man, let's give a big round of applause. Chelsea, always great having you on the show, you know, and continued success. And let me tell you something, Chelsea, before I start working at MTV and doing radio and all these different things, I was an artist. My first major label deal was with Giant Warner Brothers that was owned by Irving Azoff. And
that's my buddy.
That's your buddy, man. So if you get a chance, tell Irving. I learned so much through that deal. I learned so many mechanics about the music business, you know, and it wasn't the greatest experience being with them, Giant Warner Brothers, but it was a very learnable experience. So tell Irving, if you talk to him, Sway Calloway said thank you.
Oh, well, you know what? I'm going to get back. I'm going to text him as soon as I get off the phone, because I talk to him about 15 times a day. So I will not forget to relay that message. Okay. And I want to thank you guys. It's always so much fun to be on this show.
Absolutely. Thank you, y'all. Give it up for Chelsea. Chelsea Handler. All right. Thank you, Chelsea. Have a beautiful day. Chelsea Handler, Evolution on HBO Max. Check it out. Sway in the morning. We got...